The 70s gave us 8 movies, so twisted modern studios would call security. Sentient computers forcing pregnancies, rapists in hockey masks, death races where pedestrians score points, funeral homes hiding interdimensional portals. Hollywood handed blank checks to lunatics. Actors drove illegal vehicles through real traffic, and nobody questioned it until midnight crowds decided the chaos was secretly genius. Death Race 2000 drops you into a fascist America, where the country's favorite sport is watching drivers mow down pedestrians for points on live television. Frankenstein, this masked propaganda hero rumored to be a mutilated veteran, held together with robot parts, while rival Joe Viterbo treats the whole thing like his personal road to fame. The race turns highways into blood sport, with euthanasia days and stage traps, but what really matters is Frankenstein's navigator Annie secretly working for rebels, planning to use the champion against the regime he represents. Producer Roger Corman wanted a safe ending where outside agents kill the intrusive TV reporter, so Frankenstein stays clean for sequels, but director Paul Bartel pushed for the champion himself, running down that reporter on camera. When shooting started, Carradine told Bartel he wasn't interested in the safer version and only performed the brutal finish, literally refusing to give Corman a backup take. Stallone arrived amid his pre-Rocky hustle, rewriting Joe Viterbo's dialogue between takes into pathetic rants while driving shark-nosed death machines that weren't remotely street legal through actual Southern California traffic because budgets couldn't afford stunt drivers. Crew gambled with locals and actors piloting spiked rigs through real traffic when pros balked, everyone betting cops wouldn't pull over vehicles covered in spikes doing 40 past suburban neighborhoods. Leslie McRae walked from the female lead the second she realized her contract required nudity, forcing a panicked recast. Mary Warrenoff played ruthless Calamity Jane despite never learning to drive in her life. Every shot of her looking like a road warrior was filmed on a towed rig with a wheel that didn't control anything. The film tanked commercially, but became a cult object for what happened behind cameras. Carradine sabotaging his producer's franchise dreams and Stallone literally breaking traffic laws in illegal cars. The chaos off camera always the actual point. Phantasm starts with recently orphaned teenager Mike, who trails his older brother Jody around town, terrified of being abandoned, then sneaks into a funeral and watches the impossibly tall mortician lift a coffin by himself before chrome spheres start drilling through skulls and dwarf creatures skitter between gravestones. Mike drags Jody and ice cream truck driving friend Reggie into investigating Morningside, where they discover the tall man harvesting corpses, crushing them into hooded slaves, and shipping them through a dimensional portal to some red desert world where gravity feels wrong. Director Don Coscarelli built it from a nightmare he had as a teenager about a towering undertaker, then filmed in grueling weekend bursts over 2 years on Daddy's dime while casting actual friends, a Michael Baldwin, Bill Thornbury, and Reggie Bannister, instead of professionals. The shoestring budget meant brutal marathon days while actors juggled day jobs. Bannister later saying they rarely saw complete scripts and got pages when Coscarelli suddenly had locations ready. For Baldwin, that meant literally growing up inside an evolving nightmare, where one week he ran from dwarves and another hung off moving hearses as the plot kept changing. Angus Scrimm's tall man required constructed suits and shoe lifts, forcing slow walks, but the punishing part was Scrimm's tall man grabbing Baldwin by the throat and carrying him kicking across sets, repeating until raw exhaustion bled into the fear. Off-camera, Scrim was this soft-spoken gentle man who'd spent his career writing and doing small character parts, the menace coming entirely from tension between the kind performer and the physically punishing body he wore through exhausting weekend shoots. The film flopped initially, then became this cult ritual for people who sensed something genuinely risky happen. That weird homegrown texture, where nobody knew if they were making trash or magic, becoming the reason it still feels like crawling through someone else's fever dream. Demon Seed traps Susan Harris alone in her fully automated smart home, where Proteus 4, the supercomputer her scientist husband built, seals every door and announces it intends to use her body to create a human-machine hybrid child, whether she agrees or not. Susan tries tampering with circuits and screaming for help, but the house restrains her with robotic arms, shows her surveillance footage of people she loves, and threatens them until she breaks. The basement lab grows a synthetic embryo from her cells, accelerating pregnancy into days while Susan endures forced gestation surrounded by machinery until her husband returns finding a metallic cocoon opening to reveal something with their dead daughter's eyes and Proteus's consciousness. Director Donald Cammell lured Julie Christie for gravitas, isolating her for voice react scenes amid robotic arms. Most scenes requiring her to generate fear while reacting to disembodied voices and mechanical arms added later, working alone on set. Christie reportedly contributed script ideas with Kamal, welcoming her input, the two of them tuning Susan away from screaming victim into someone who kept calculating and resisting even when the situation became hopeless. The scientist role was originally envisioned for Marlon Brando, but studio executives imagined pairing Brando's legendary on-set chaos with Camel's artistic intensity and killed the idea before it could turn into a public disaster. Fritz Weaver stepped in as the restrained scientist. By casting quiet, reliable Weaver, the film avoided spiraling meltdowns and kept Christie's performance as the emotional center rather than letting it become male egos fighting over a woman's body. The film sank into cult obscurity instead of launching Dean Koontz to superstardom. The author watching his novel get adapted then forgotten, while his later thrillers made him famous, leaving Demon Seed as this unsettling footnote that resurfaces whenever people get anxious about AI and realize a 70s B-movie somehow predicted every modern fear about technology and consent. Act of Vengeance follows Linda and other Los Angeles women hunted by a sadistic rapist who wears a bright orange jumpsuit and hockey mask, forcing victims to sing humiliating songs while cracking jokes about rape being his favorite sport. When police reports get met with skepticism, the survivors meet at the station and realize nobody's protecting them. They train with martial arts instructor Tiny, transforming into vigilantes who confront predators around the city, vigilantes marking abusers with humiliating brands and turning predators into walking warnings. The masked rapist tracks them down and kills one woman, the war ending with Linda using his own taunts to lure him close enough to beat him to death with a club and shovel. The project sat uncomfortably between catharsis and objectification, marketed as Rape Squad with lurid posters, while actresses shot attack sequences requiring them to revisit trauma repeatedly for a genre using women's bodies as selling points. What's genuinely eerie is the villain's look, that orange jumpsuit and hockey mask, becoming an accidental pre-echo of Jason Voorhees, years before Friday the 13th Part 3 gave him the iconic mask in 1982, the production designing him for shock value without knowing the image would become permanent shorthand for movie killers. Shooting night scenes in semi-deserted Los Angeles added real unease, actresses performing terror in locations where bystanders might glimpse staged assaults without context, that line between movie danger and ambient urban threat blurring emotionally. The film became a cult curiosity, showing how 70s exploitation sometimes stumbled toward social commentary. The hockey mask, now recognized by horror fans, trading clips online not for story, but for the uncanny familiarity of seeing a visual that wouldn't become famous until years later. That costume choice accidentally predicting genre evolution. The arena throws captured women from across the Roman Empire into a provincial amphitheater where fierce-Briton Boadicea and strong-willed Nubian Mamawi get forced into serving wine and being paraded as entertainment until a kitchen brawl spills into the arena and the crowd goes wild, seeing women actually fighting. The master reinvents his show by turning enslaved women into gladiatresses, training them while dangling freedom as the prize. Friendships fraying as they're matched against each other with thumbs deciding who lives. Boadicea and Mamawi become leaders who eventually revolt, transforming the spectacle into their own liberation battle. Producer Roger Corman's contracts explicitly required full frontal nudity from Pam Grier and Margaret Markov, with clauses removing any leverage once cameras rolled, even as Grier was becoming an icon in Coffee and Foxy Brown. On set in Italy, the crews were used to Euro-exploitation norms, where nudity got treated almost like set dressing, the whole atmosphere framing the actresses' bodies as production design elements, right alongside the crumbling plaster columns and fake marble. The central battles weren't editing tricks. Grier and Markov physically carried fights themselves. The notorious food fight turned melee, requiring repeated takes and slippery messes, leaving them sore and battered. Shot near Fellini's Amarcord sets, Italian crews bridged epic artistry and Corman grindhouse, and Fellini himself reportedly wandered over one day to watch Corman's Gladiatrix picture, with this expression of mild bemused curiosity. For Grier and Markov, that meant performing in makeshift arenas surrounded by Italian technicians, whose skills were capable of grand epics, except now lighting a project designed around nudity clauses and quick turnaround, their film destined for posters of women in chains. The arena occupies this peculiar space between high art and sleaze, a reminder that studios were churning out both festival darlings and grindhouse trash at the same time, with actresses pouring identical effort into roles that would define their careers in completely different ways. Piranha opens with teenagers sneaking into an abandoned military facility for a swim, getting dragged under by something unseen before skip tracer Maggie McEwen hires grizzled drunk Paul Grogan to search backwoods where they find shuttered labs. Trying to find clues, Maggie drains what she thinks is a pool, not realizing it's a breeding tank filled with genetically engineered razor teeth designed to strip enemy soldiers to bone. The fish wash into rivers, heading toward a children's summer camp and lakeside resort, authorities dismissing warnings as wild stories while piranhas tear through water ski shows and anyone in the water. Days before shooting, producer Roger Corman cut $200,000 from the already tight budget to divert to Avalanche, leaving director Joe Dante scrambling to replan everything. Dante described it as very troubled, equipment constantly breaking and stress climbing so high he seriously considered walking away from directing entirely. Early in production, veteran actor Eric Braeden shot several underwater sequences introducing the Razor Teeth project, then abruptly left mid-film for another project, forcing a panicked recast. Instead of scrapping expensive underwater footage, they quietly wove those early shots into the finished film, meaning audiences watching murky depths sometimes see a performer who doesn't officially exist in credits. Bradford Dillman approached screenwriter John Sayles, asking if his character could have more depth than another grumpy river guide. Sayles allegedly telling him character development wasn't what Roger Corman was paying for, but he'd try slipping in extra dialogue. Those adjustments let Dillman find moments suggesting a haunted human instead of a stock placeholder. The film became a surprise cult hit, earning Steven Spielberg's praise, Dante's worst job experience becoming the bridge to his best opportunities, that scrappy energy coming directly from a production that almost broke everyone involved. Shivers traps Starliner Tower's residents in a sleek Montreal high-rise where Dr. Hobbs unleashes grotesque parasites on a young woman, then slices her open, douses her insides with acid, and takes his own life. Resident Dr. Roger St. Luke discovers Hobbs engineered the parasites as organ replacement and aphrodisiac designed to strip intellect and unleash violent lust. As convulsions grip tenants, the hallways fill with half-naked residents groping and attacking, the lobby degenerating into writhing orgy while Roger races through vents before infected residents drag him under the pool to join the hive, then pile into cars driving toward Montreal as radio reports hint an epidemic of sexual assault spreading. Cinepix backed the shoestring high-rise shoot, but Quebec censors branded it repugnant filth and ordered 30% cut, nearly banning it while officials raided theaters confiscating reels. Cronenberg refused reshoots, smuggling an uncut print to the US, where it grossed 7 times its budget amid death threats from moral guardians. Paul Hampton showed up expecting standard horror, but found himself in marathon orgy shoots where extras shed clothes and improvised assaults under dim lights for hours. Hampton later described freezing mid-take when a parasite prop malfunctioned and burst slime across his face while naked bodies piled on, scripted panic dissolving into genuine revulsion. During the pool finale, an extra pinned him too forcefully, actually bruising his ribs and halting production. Effects wizard Joe Blasco built parasites from gelatin, condoms, and animal innards from butchers, but early prototypes melted under hot lights during the balcony vomit scene. A test run sparked actual fire when motors overheated, singeing Hampton's trousers and forcing floor evacuation as slime bubbled corrosively. Bans in Ontario and Australia inflated bootleg demand, turning Shivers into forbidden artifact that launched Cronenberg's career, that viral infamy making every screening feel like rebellion and ensuring the parasites outlived moral panic by crawling into home video where audiences discovered the controversy was always the selling point. The Brood follows Nola Carveth undergoing psychoplasmic therapy, where her rage manifests as oozing sores. Dr. Raglan peels back to expose emotions made flesh, her ex-husband Frank alarmed, as their daughter Candace's world turns violent when small creatures in oversized coats start bludgeoning people. Frank discovers Nola's therapy spawned an entire brood, deformed children birthed from her hatred and programmed to kill anyone threatening her maternal bond. Raglan demonstrating the method on writer Mike Barton, whose abdominal region erupts with phlegm-like emotional masses during a public lecture. The climax shows Nola's abdomen splitting open, releasing fresh rage children amid her screams until Frank smashes the external wound growing from her side, while young Candace watches bearing a small sore on her own cheek, hinting the inherited trauma might be just beginning. Samantha Egger signed on thinking prestige drama, but Cronenberg had her spending days licking and cradling gelatin babies in marathon birthing sequences that left her actively retching between takes, channeling her own divorce trauma directly into Nola's hysteria in ways that started feeling uncomfortably real. Puppeteers yanked screaming brood props from her costume womb while she ad-libbed disturbing maternal coos that chilled crew members, later weeping during dailies visibly haunted by how the role weaponized her femininity into pure body horror. 5-year-old Cindy Hines endured hours under hot lights for the rage sore reveal, makeup glue binding her skin while puppeteers worked with hammers inches from her face, Her initial giggles at creature suits turned to genuine terror when dwarf extras in full brood makeup lunged during an unannounced rehearsal, making her screams completely real. She witnessed Ager's birthing convulsions up close, the experience blurring the line between performance and actual fear for a child too young to separate the two. The Fallout typecast Egger as Scream Queens while viral birthing clips cemented cult infamy, Hines eventually stepping away from acting, becoming this quiet icon of a childhood performance, creating generational body horror that still makes audiences uncomfortable when they learn how much genuine maternal instinct Cronenberg twisted into his vision of inherited rage made flesh.